Good morning.
Hey guys,
Episode 6 of Couple of Kooks. How are we feeling today?
I'm good. We already got people showing up.
We have people. We have people. Shane wants to have a good show. Hope he has a good day. Gets his steps in. My man, Zakanin, rumbling
Mm,
in. He's feeling it. Stacey, good morning.
Stacy,
Chris, good morning. Jerk,
Christopher, Jerks here.
good morning. Zach and I will be live with Yojo Jerk Thursday after he's live with the Thursday Night Thunder crew.
Cool. What are you guys
Hi,
talking
Mom.
about? Hello,
We are
Shannon.
going to be talking about Crayon Slayer, uh, favorite cover songs.
Awesome.
That should be a pretty good one. Hats off to Scott Hughes; he came up with that one, and we snatched it right up.
That's a good one.
Joe Fan Addict, yeah. So that's going to be our topic Thursday. That's going to be a. I'm actually, excuse me, really looking forward to it. Um, that is something, as you know, we're big fans of cover songs, so that'll be cool. Oh, Connie's here. Good
Thank you,
morning.
Connie. Good morning.
Wow, how cool is that? All right. So what's on the docket today, Pop?
Um, we're going to talk about something I call design intent, and I'll explain what that means and how that applies to just about anything you ever work on, whether you're doing something as a for a client or for yourself. Could be any project you have. It is just one of those things that it's the discipline that I follow when I create something. And I'm going to share it with everybody. It seems like really basic stuff, but if you're missing any part of it, it will come back to bite you. And it's especially a big deal if you are working for somebody and collecting a paycheck on how many hours you spend on the project. So I'm going to go over that. We talked a little bit about it last week when I talked about the sci-fi rifle and how if it's easy to make it in a modeling software like parametrics, like in Onshape or uh, any 3D CAD software, but modifying it after you've done it, that can be a problem. So you just have to figure out what your workflow is going to be, and I'm going to explain that. And that's kind of what we're going to do. And then I'm going to talk about one of my favorite tools to use when I am working on something, either for myself or that somebody says, "Hey, just go at it. This is kind of what I want. Just make me something." So that's kind of what we're going to go over today. Um,
Sweet.
so
Yeah, what'd you get? Like
we'll
4 hours, Jay? Jeez. Kirby, morning. You give her a sunshine, Zach. Don't make me
come on,
repeat myself.
come on, man.
Keanu, how are we?
Morning.
Well, that sounds it's an interesting look into what most people don't see with the design things. It's kind of a struggle if you're the one that's taking the job. It's kind of a struggle that we have to deal with in various capacities. But for people on the outside, this little peek behind the curtain, you get to see what the wizard's really made of.
It is, and I put this thing together today just to kind of make it so that you'll see that you could use this for anything that you're making. You just may not follow it as seriously. You're always like, if you're doing just a home craft at home, even if you're doing something with the kids, right? You're putting together a craft or an activity, and you want to say like, okay, I need to know these three things before I even jump into this. It doesn't seem like a big deal. It seems like natural things, but if you don't like have it, in front of you to make little notes, if you forget something, it can really mess you up. Morning, Jeff.
Morning, buddy.
So I'm going to explain it a little bit. I did talk about it last week, but the term design intent came from parametric modeling when it first started coming out. Parametric modeling was the step between just drawing a blueprint in CAD, just 2D CAD, to actually being able to create a model. Parametrics says that all the components are related somehow. So in parametric modeling, you would say like, hey, this hole goes 4 inches from this side, or it's 4 inches from this, relative dimensions. And if you change one of those dimensions, it could possibly change, depending on how you link them together, it could change all of the other dimensions of the rest of the object. So if you're designing something, you kind of need to know what the intent of the hole you're going to tell it to drill is, right? So that's design intent. You're getting ready to say like, okay, I'm going to design this box with a cover that has to have a hole in it that 18 gauge wire can go in. Other than that, I don't care what it looks like. And then, but so your design intent is, I'm going to make a box, I'm going to make a cover, and there's got to be a hole in it that'll hold wire. That's your design intent. So that's how you model the entire thing with that design intent in mind. So
this does play a part, JMac. This definitely is part of it, at least for the modeling. Engineering mindset is definitely part of it.
And when you are designing anything, you tap into those skills. Even though you may not be classically trained, you may not have gone to college to be a mechanical engineer. Knowing the tools that mechanical engineers use on a daily basis, just like knowing the tools that a process engineer uses on a daily basis, that an accountant uses. When you're designing stuff for other people or for yourself, that is a new thing that nobody else in your little group is doing, you end up having to be all of those things, and you don't even realize it. You do it every day in everyday life. Just like when we were kids, and the math teacher, you'd give the math teacher crap and say, "When would I ever need to know how to do this?" And then I use math every day in my life. A lot of people don't, but you do more than you think you do because you were taught early, and now you just apply it to everyday skills.
How much long division are you doing?
Not as often on long division. But remember,
things like multiplication, fractions, and that kind of thing you use all the time.
Yeah, and sometimes it gets more complicated than that, especially in a manufacturing environment where you're trying to figure out optimization of equipment and time versus or when you're doing like depreciation of an object, how much money it's costing you every year to have it after you pay for it, things like that, amortization, stuff like that. A lot of us use those tools all the time and don't even think about that that's what we're using the tools for. So I'm going to go through the checklist, and I'm going to explain like how it applies to what you're actually doing. And you'll see that as the checklist develops, you can see how a person would be able to quote their time that they knew they were going to need, materials they were going to need, things like that, what they were actually going to charge for a job, or what you're going to invest in it to do it. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna share this.
Morning, Gun Bunny.
All right. So this is my design intent checklist, and
Kirby, I think it's an acquired taste, perhaps.
Math is gross. Thank God we have phones with calculators on them. Easy scale calculators on the Google. So the number one thing, obviously, is the out. What's your final going to be? Is it going to be, what's it going to be for? The general idea. Hey, I need you to make me a shelf that goes in this corner. Hey, I need you to make me a piece that fits this toy. I need you to make me a way to my blinds make a bunch of noise when the breeze goes through them. What can I do to that? Can you print me something out that'll stop blinds from rattling around during the day? The medium, what are you going to make it out of? What's the base? Not just the material itself, but what's the base? Is it going to be a wooden shelf? Is it going to be a t-shirt? Is it going to be, what is it going to be? And then material, as far as And the reason that these are important, maybe it's a piece of artwork. Maybe you're just doing a piece of artwork. Maybe you're 3D printing something. Maybe you're making something for manufacturing. Maybe you're just making a one-off thing that somebody asks you to make, and you're just going to craft it yourself. Okay, that's the medium, right? And then the materials you're going to have to get into. Hey, Justin. All right, the scope of the project. Uh, how big is it going to be? How many do you need? Right? How many could also mean how many components do I have to put together to make it? All right, so scope does actually have a lot of different things about it that apply to the whole project. And then there's parameters.
Morning, Robert.
Morning, Robert.
Bunch of cooks.
The design parameters, specific details you want me to include or not to include. This could be, hey, I need you to make me this shelf, and it has to hold 4 coffee cups, and I don't like white, so you can make it any color but white. Okay. I want you to make me a pair of goggles for an action figure. They can't look like this though, because that's dumb. I hate that. Okay, I know to avoid that then when I draw something for you. All right, and that seems like a big deal, but that, like I said, each one of these, if you're halfway through the project and one of these things change, it could wreck the whole project. And then there's reference. So reference is your inspiration style, the overall finish. Is there something you want it to look like? Is there something you don't want it to look like? Some of these things are related, but I group them together because when I'm putting something together or designing something, I kind of need to think all that through. I need to see all that up front. I was talking about doing a kid's craft thing, right? You're going to carve pumpkins, so what tools do I need for that? What do the kids like? What do they want their pumpkins to look like this year? What are we going to be carving out? Uh, you know, you're doing that to do that. What the outcome is. There's going to be a jack-o'-lantern. The scope, you got to make 3 of them because there's 3 kids. The parameters are, well, we don't want to do what we did last year. And then your reference materials are, we saw these and we like these. I'm going to try to incorporate this, right? And the one that can really kill you when all the others change is the timeline. When does it need to be completed?
Yeah.
So everyone that is in a business where you have timelines jokes about timelines because people don't realize that I've been working on this. You gave me a 2-month deadline. Month 1 is over. I'm into month 2, and you said, "Hey guys, I'm actually going to need that about 4 inches smaller." Like, well, now I have to go through the entire checklist again and redo it. Knowing the timeline tells me kind of in a ballpark figure that I can tell you how much it's going to cost to make it.
Right.
So the reason you do this, and you would do this, some of these things seem like, well, I like to just grab like a piece of clay or a piece of digital clay and just go after it and see what I come up with. That's fine. You should be able to do that. In fact, sometimes that's just the creative outlet you need just to get something out. Just you need to throw some paint on a board and draw something. Sure. I just need to sketch for a couple of hours. And those aren't things, I'm not saying those things don't exist or need to exist, because as somebody that does both the art side and the model side, like, there are times when you just need to get your creativity out of you and do something with it. But
you have to remove this thought and just let the actions go through your fingers. Remove the picture in your mind and just go with a natural flow. See where it comes out.
I'm going to give some examples later of some ideas, client relationships where that was both the issue on one of them, and then later the thing that made it go so smooth, right? So this is what I'm kind of talking about today. I'll pull that down. And there's a lot of reasons and ways to do this. I know I was just talking to Mikey this morning about this, but this year is going to be a huge year for projects for me, and I have a ton of stuff going on. And if I don't follow something like this for each project that I'm working on, I'll totally lose whatever I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, that is a great question.
I would say it's probably easier to count the times that it didn't change than it is to count the times that it did. That ratio is far
skewed. Honestly, and this, like I said, this is true even if you pour driveways, right? Like you'll be doing the driveway and the owner will come out halfway through and say like, what if we extended it like just another 5 inches this way? Yeah, okay. I guess we could do that. But there is people just do not realize it, because they're thinking like if they were doing it, like if I knew how to pour concrete, I'd slap down some mold walls and I'd throw it up there. I don't need that. I know this shouldn't be this big a deal. You should just be able to do this. Literally worked for a man for years who would be building a master boat, right, which is the full scale of the boat, so 20, 21, 22-foot bass boat. And we would have it all bondoed in, finished out to at least 80 grit, which is right before you put the poly primer on it. President of the company would come down, he'd sit in the boat, and he would say, like, let's move this console 1 inch over. Well, that's 4 days worth of work. I mean, he's paying for it. It's okay. But as the person that did it, now you have to cut all that out. You're gonna have to take that size somewhere else and put it together. That sucks, man. It sucks being the person that does it. He didn't mind. He was flipping the bill.
Yeah, sometimes that's a very 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 different outcome than what was intended. Morning, Jim.
Yeah, and I will tell you that there have been times when I worked on a project with somebody that turned into something else, and I still have all the files from the original project, thinking that is worth going in and doing something with it. I still want to go back to that someday, and I am going to talk about an example of that here in just a few minutes.
Yeah. This comment that JMag brings up this is what most people that do something that provide a service or use skill. This is what everybody has to deal with at some point, because from the outside, sometimes you make things look much easier than they really are, and sometimes people really only grasp the concept because you say, "Oh, I just got to frame in a wall, put the drywall on it, poke the holes for the boxes, run the electric." That all sounds simple. What they don't understand is the process it takes to do all of that. And that's the same whether you're designing something or if you're framing in a house, which John and I have both done with the same man. Done that with Papa, and that's something.
That is something that's a good point right there, because when you go into a job and you want the customer to believe that you are a competent person, that you know exactly what to do, so you go into it and you'll say things like, "Oh yeah, that's not a big deal. We can bring that out 2 foot. Not a big deal, and we'll run wire in there." Now, what you mean is, if you tell me right now you want that to go 2 foot out, I'm going to design everything else about this project to make this go 2 foot out. I'm not designing it as a sliding wall that you can adjust the parameters at any time during the project. But because you came in and made it sound like it was so easy, like, yeah, I can do that, then in their head, they think, well, he didn't seem like it was a big deal to do that. Let's just ask him to change it.
Right.
And it's the mindset, it's the customer service mindset. And you're always going to deal with it. But if you use just something on a piece of paper or something on your phone that helps you remember the steps, then you can help, because all of those steps, it's probably more like I probably should have done a circle diagram, because all those things just end up going back to each other. You change this parameter, it changes that. Mikey, I know you've had custom projects where somebody was very specific about the color and everything they wanted something to do. And after you had painted it, after you put all the detail and everything in it, they were like, yeah, I think that base color should be orange.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
shit. You could have
Yep.
said that at any time after I painted it black.
Yep.
But you waited till I did all the other work to finish it out.
Yep.
You know?
100%.
And they don't, as a person that makes something, whether you're doing it for your profession or a hobby, like that is one of the most frustrating things. But at the same time, we've told everybody the customer's always right. And we want to get paid, even though now we're going to get paid about 50% less than the job's worth because we've had to redo it 3 times. But the customer's always right. Even when they're wrong, they're right. And
that kind of leads into this question from Jeff. How do you two manage the customer that breaks or mismanages the model or design? It's really just something you just, at least me, after a long time in customer service, it's just you try not to just lash out, right? That's kind of the first step is not just having outbursts, but thinking about it from the business side. You really kind of have to play the game of averages. Like, how often does this happen? And then you just end up kind of factoring one or two of those into your time. That's what I do, at least. Like, it really doesn't happen that often for me. Now, I don't get calls every day to do jobs, but it doesn't happen that often. So when it does, I just have to put that into perspective that this doesn't happen very often. It's one time. Yes, it sucks. It sucks having to go through it all and redo it, but it doesn't happen a lot. And if it does happen a lot, then you just have to implement steps to counter that, like more questions, narrow it down even more precisely, and then being upfront with the customer. That's how I deal with that for the most part.
Yeah, and it is frustrating because especially if you are doing contract work of any kind, you are both an upstream and downstream consumer, right? You're trying to get this job done for a person. At the same time, they asked you to put that 2-foot wall out there, and they didn't want it 2 foot, they wanted it 42 inches, right? And you had to buy a specific part from one of your vendors to fit that 42 inches, and now they want it 51 inches. Now what? Now I have to look like an asshole to the guy that I asked to make a custom frame for that wall. I have to go to him and look like the idiot. I have to go to him and be like, yeah, the customer changed. I swear to God, I didn't measure it wrong. No, J-Mac, that is true. That is why when you say the customer is always right and you are someone in customer service, you are being sarcastic AF.
Yeah, it's
not always right.
The eye roll is implied. You do, Chris. I appreciate it. I like a little creative freedom.
Chris, that happens a lot too. And the stuff we're talking about, I'm not taking away from the great customers that Mikey and I have that have full trust in us and let us do our own thing, because in the end, that usually are some of our favorite pieces that we were able to do ourselves. But it is also nice, even if you're in construction or custom built, projects like like HVAC, stuff like that. Even if you're in that, there is some satisfaction that you get. Connie's talking about quilting. Yes, that is same with that. It doesn't matter what you're making.
No.
I'm going to give you guys an example, and I'm gonna pimp a product here that if you're doing 3 3/4 stuff, this stuff I think you can still pick up on smalljoes.com, I think. But it was
this one about Jane. This is what I think of, like, at my work. Our IT department is notoriously difficult to deal with, but I have seen the other side where, like, the IT becomes difficult to deal with because they have to do this all the time. Like, did you try? It always sounds dumb, but did you try turning it on and turning it off and turning it back on again? I know that sounds like a stupid step, but like 50% of the time, that's what it needs.
And
So
that's what they do.
I kind of get the other side too.
Well, that's the thing, right? I said sometimes you're the downstream customer, sometimes you're the upstream customer, and holy
Yeah.
shit, you really do when you're in any sort of service industry or contractual industry. Man, there is so much that you don't even legwork is right. There's a lot you're doing, and when someone says like you say, well, okay, you want me to do that from scratch, you don't really have a reference except this picture from a 1960s newspaper, with little lines in it, and everything's smeared, but you want me to make a perfect representation of that in a scale that it's never been done for, and blueprints don't even exist. And I tell you, that's probably going to cost about $300 for me to model that for you. And you go, oh, like, well, you're not, it's not Photoshop, man. I can do you a Photoshop of that in a couple hours,
Sure.
But that is something that everybody runs into, devaluing your work. Somebody says, I could get that roof done for a third of the price. And you're like, yeah, but is it going to leak? Like, I'm telling you, I'm going to do it for this price. It's going to be right. And I'll stand by it. I'll come back and fix it if it's wrong. You know me, I live right down the street.
Third of the price is somebody putting a third or fourth layer of shingles on top of the
of what you have.
Maybe that's the third of the price job.
Like, maybe smear some tar on it for you.
Yeah, slap some tar on it. Maybe maybe put some indoor caulk around some of the fixtures and shingle right over the top of it. So now your roof is bearing way more of a load than it was supposed to. That's your third of a price. There's always most of the time you hit a point, and then anything past that point is just how many corners somebody is willing to cut. Like and I think that's why people always say like go middle of the road, because your absorbent amount is either you're really high end people that are so booked up that it just takes that much money to get on the radar, or they're overcharging just from the get go. Then you have the person that's just charging what it costs, and then from under that, you're just corner cutting, just taking some off the top.
Yep. Jeff, that's a funny thing to say, because the president of the company I was talking about earlier, we literally one year built an entire boat, a size we had never done before, a concept we had never done before, off of a napkin sketch that he did at a Christmas party while everyone had been drinking. And in 5 months, I took that napkin sketch and turned that into a boat to take to the Las Vegas dealer convention. Yeah, so I do know exactly what napkin sketches, how dangerous they are.
That's not the only time you've done the napkin thing though.
Oh God,
just a couple of years ago you did it with Complex.
Yeah, so let's talk about Complex. All right, let's talk about this.
Morning, Gonzo.
Guys, Complex, I was talking about it a few minutes ago. It's a building platform with sliding walls. It comes with little connectors, and the walls all slide together. They have walls and floors.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, and in the upper right-hand corner, there's 2 little panels there. Those panels pop out, and when this was first designed, they knew they were going to build accessories for it. I met the owner of the company one year, and he asked me if I'd be interested in doing some 3D work for him. I said that I would. And so the first thing we wanted to do was a door to fit in that doorway.
Jeff's over here. I'm something of a boat salesman myself.
There is a therapeutic thing to having done that for over half of my life. Yes, I do love the build. I'm not a boatsman per se. I can drive a boat, but building them is what I would much rather do. So this is the piece. This is the wall piece. These 2 little center things came out. Oops, what is that?
That's a Pinewood Derby car.
It is. When somebody says, "Hey, will you make my kid a Pinewood Derby car?" Just make it look cool. Okay. I will make every other father there so sad when they leave. Anyway, so he said, let's build a door. It needs to open. It needs to do this, and it needs to fit within that little door frame. And so we did. Yeah, here we go. Let me share the. Stop that. Present. This is more difficult than I think it should be.
Saturday. Derek, where are you at? It's time traveling. Good morning. That's not true, Max. I sent you a Facebook message right when we started. This one's on you. I tried.
So this was the doorway. You can see that it has a little spot there where some sort of other piece is going to go. The problem was that it's not quite. See if I can find this. I don't know why it's not letting me do this. Frustrating.
What are you trying to do?
Go to a different image. The images got out of order somehow.
Oh.
Yeah, very, very frustrating. All right, let me find it here. They got way out of order. Mm-hmm. All right. Let me find this thing. Anyway, we designed the door, and the door was not. It was very plain. Try this again. There we go. Because at first the direction was, the concept was that it would just look like any other warehouse door, you know. Well, this looks like a warehouse door to me. I work in warehouses. I know what it looks like. But the client's like, no, no, no. It needs to have. It needs to be a little more like science fiction. Let me show you what I mean. And he sent me. This is what he sent me. There it is. All right.
Maybe we should go over the age of the client just so they understand this is not this was not a child.
It was not a child. This guy had already created the complex line. It was at that time very successful. Like I said, you can still get the pieces at smalljoes.com. They're pretty cool. These pieces, though, unfortunately, we did a Kickstarter, and that Kickstarter has been dropped. Has been not dropped, but seriously held back by the factory, and he's trying too hard to get the project done. So that he, so I am a, I am a customer service person, so I drew exactly pretty much what he had on there.
That's what it looks like, yeah.
I spent about 3-4 hours on it, sent it back to him. His message back was, LOL, you drew exactly what I sent you. Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I did. So as frustrating as that was, I went ahead and I worked with him every step of the way to come up with this version. And this is what we ended up with. It's not
That
bad. It's a lot
that's
different.
not at all what was on that paper.
No, it isn't. It isn't. But I did learn a lot of things during this several day exchange. And it was very clear to me that obviously each client is going to be different. Each person you work with is going to be different. Some are going to have some. I think somebody was talking earlier about I want it to look like what I put on the piece of paper from my head.
Mhm. Yep,
There are
I was
some
seeing that.
people that can do that exactly, and there are some people that can't do it at all. But then there are some people that think that they just drew what was in their head until you make it real, and then they're like, no, I don't know where you got that.
Yes.
Well, I got it from the sketch that you sent me.
This is what you sent me.
Yeah. Um, now don't worry. This definitely did not stop me finishing this with this company. There were a whole lot of other pieces that we designed that next few months, and you can see in the top left corner is the door all finished out. These were the first factory pieces that didn't fit together very well. Like I said, the factory has been very difficult. But there's a lot of neat stuff there that's going to go with that. If you had the original complex series, you'd be able to upgrade it with warehouse style stairs, catwalks, all kinds of things, computer terminals, just stuff like that. So that's an example of a client that kind of changes what you're doing while you're doing it. But you do expect some of that, especially when it's something that doesn't exist at all, and it's going to be. Yeah, Chris, it happens all the time. Many times with this very same client. Um, and that's because of, again, if you're doing design intent and you tell me, like, I am going to have the factory in China make this, and you show me a design that I know would never pull out of a mold, I'm going to have to go through how molds work once again with you and tell you that cannot happen. And if it could happen, it would take multiple inserts that you'd end up spending almost twice as much on tooling just to have little inserts to have this weird undercut that you really don't need. So so that is, yes, it does happen, and it's very difficult to explain to somebody why those things can't happen. When you look at how engineering is done on stuff that you have in your hand, you see the hours and hours of work that they did. You just see the end result. You don't know how hard it was for them to somehow make the tread of the tire be able to pull out of a mold. You have no idea how much extra stuff they had to do to put the peg in the bottom of a foot mold, right? Because a foot mold is two halves that go together. So where's the peg come from? Well, that has to be a mold insert with the peg built into it that has to go into the mold, and then it gets clamped together and made. So that makes the mold way more complex. Same if it's got a hole in the top, like a modern style figure with the hole in top where the joint goes into it. There's another piece of that mold. The foot becomes a fairly expensive part to make because of that.
Yep.
So that, I mean, but that's not to say that that there aren't ways around that. And sometimes you end up working with an associate that is very easy to work with, always knows what they want. And I run into that with the owner of Strikeforce Alpha, Jason Shiremeyer. Jason and I have an incredibly good relationship when it comes to coming up with a concept. And I'm going to show you what one of my favorite things to do when somebody says something like, design me a weapon, or we need some weapon designs. And I use the silhouette message. This is method. This is not new. This is something concept people for movies have been doing for years. But so you just take a Sharpie and you just block out the shape of a bunch of different weird guns. like, or backpacks, or whole body design, like just a silhouette. Even in comic book design, silhouette is king. So it's a good way to go. And then from this, uh, Jason picked out a few of them, and we shared the concept. So I took those and blocked them out. Jason did a few of them. We worked back and forth on that until we had actually designed for Strike Force Alpha a full set of weapons. And I'm just going to share this because I like the look at this. These are the models on my 3D printer. But these are all the weapons that we designed, and it's pretty cool to see some of these weapons actually in the Strike Force Alpha packages. It's kind of cool knowing that I helped with that I got to be part of it. And I always look forward to working with Jason because he does things like he'll say, John, can you make these for me? And I can tell everything Jason needs from that picture right there, right? I know everything that he needs. I can tell you exactly what he's going to have. And I can do that. It literally took me less than an hour to knock out both of these because the detail and what he was asking was so dead on. Like, he gave me everything he needed in design intent to make these for him. So it can go both ways, right? To the point where Jason had the backpack that comes with one of his troopers, kind of looks like a scuba pack, kind of looks like a space pack, and he was having trouble because his design was fairly complex for a mold, for just a basic mold. So he had a guy look at it, and he couldn't get anything done with it, so he asked me to take it, and I did, and split it into two parts, and each part could be done as a layer to glue it together, and that's what they ended up doing. And like I said, seeing the parts in the Strike Force Alpha packs is always makes me feel good.
Sure.
So that's two different versions of how you can have a wandering design development where you're just kind of developing it, but everyone has to understand when you're doing that, you've got to you have to understand up front which one it's going to be. If I have clients booked until August, right, and you come up with a project that you need in July, now I can probably move my schedule around if it's a 2-week project. But if you tell me, like, well, we're going to design it all and then design it again and then maybe one more time, but I still need it all by July, that's a lot harder pill to swallow, and I'm going to probably ask for more money to do that, and I think that's fair. When you're getting into this, my time is my money. My experience is what makes my time work for me. Like, it may take a new person 3 hours to draw the same thing I can draw in a half hour or an hour. So yeah, you may pay a little more. $50 an hour might be a little much compared to other people, but for $50 an hour, I'm going to give you $50 of work. Every year I have of experience, everything I understand about design intent, all of those things, I'm going to ask you the right questions up front to get the job done the way you need it to be done. That I take pride in that. And sometimes that sounds a little crazy. Now, if somebody puts a crazy deadline on me, I'm going to say, like, I will take the job, but it's going to cost this much more. Mm-hmm. And that's what you have to do. You just have to figure out the ways to make it work. I want to see anybody that wants to try to make an action figure or a vehicle or something. I want to see everybody get a shot at it. I think it'd be awesome if there were just tons of people. Thank you. Thank you. Don't make me show the Pinewood Derby car again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of goes back to the old you know, you can have two of the three, right? You can have it good, you can have it fast, and you can have it cheap. You pick two of those. That's what you can do. Nobody's doing all three. And I think it also comes down to um, managing expectations a little bit, as well as and this is something that took me a long time to kind of understand, but anticipating customers' needs. Like you were saying, when you're quoting a job, and this is only something that comes from time and experience, is understanding the potential hangups and getting them ironed out from the get go. Like it's just what something you've had you know this is going to come up, so you're getting ahead of it, you're asking the right question, you're anticipating the customer's needs, like designing something like, well, what's your intent with it, like what do you want to do with it? Okay, well, that changes the parameters a little bit. Like
Yeah.
if you're wanting something modeled so that you can cast it and make a castable part, okay, well, now negative drafts come into play, you have to know that kind of thing, and that's only something you get with the experience and knowing what questions to ask at the beginning.
Yeah, and also knowing, in my own experience, the things that trip up the factory.
Right.
That's
Right.
it. That's exactly right, Chris. The things that I can tell you, if you hand this over to a factory, they're gonna mess up. They're gonna do something you did not ask them to do at all. So that does happen. I always use especially here where we live in the Midwest, there are a lot of handcrafted furniture builders, right? And they build a coffee table and they put it on Facebook Marketplace. It's $400, and they'll get 6 or 7 people on there. Like, I can just go to IKEA. Yeah, you can, or you can get this one of a kind craft built table that this guy has 40 years of experience making tables. It's a beautiful piece of art. Plus, it's fully functional. Or you could just do that. But that is, I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. That is the thing that gets people off track on manufacturing of vehicles and stuff. And you talk about how much a vehicle costs. You're not going to pay that. I won't pay that for it. That's fine. Just admit that it's okay. I don't want to pay U.S. labor prices to have that made the way I want it made. Just
Right.
just remember that the next time you get on your soapbox about, I want to be able to buy things from China because I don't like slave labor, but if it's in China, I don't care. Just remember that. And it comes back to that with people that make things here in the States, handmade goods, home manufacturing stuff. Those guys, shout out to those people. They put work in, day out to build stuff. And I swear every Facebook Marketplace post I see that those guys are selling something, they get at least 4 to 6 comments from people like that say, I can just get that at Walmart for $30.
Right.
And yes, you can. You could also use concrete blocks and pieces of plywood for your
Right.
coffee table. It's really a matter of what you want, but don't denigrate someone else's years of experience and what their time is.
Yeah.
And that's probably
Yeah.
over the
Don't
years.
don't devalue their product. I mean, you're talking about something that is pressed particles of wood formed into a shape and stuck together with dowel rods and screws, as opposed to something that was hand carved. It was mitered precisely. It was routed precisely. Somebody that poured some time into it. And you're not even talking. I mean, those people that use the power tools. You're not even talking about like people that sculpt wood, use chisels and that kind of thing. Like it's just it's not even apples and oranges. It's like apples and bricks. Like they're complete. It couldn't be further apart from one another.
Yeah, Justin's right. You have to. You have to, because I'm going to have to put off something, or I'm going to have to spend a couple of all-nighters making up for the deadline. And when you're thinking about time that you're going to put towards a job, you're assuming you will get to sleep in between those 12-hour segments of working on the stuff.
Right.
8 to 12. I know you don't, we're not working 12 straight hours. Most of us do take breaks and eat something in between, but it's still your time. You're paying for my time. And if it's a big project, if you're asking me to paint the ceiling in a comic book shop, That's a lot different than asking me to, hey, can you just 3D model a couple of guns for me? And so that you got to put all that in.
For those of you that don't know, those are both jobs that he has taken at different points in his life. Like comic books, that was like what 94, 95?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Comic store painted the whole ceiling to look like the galaxy. It was pretty cool. Little glow in the dark stars and everything. Yeah. I hate that, man. I hate when people do that, and I also don't like that at a convention, right? When you go to a convention and you're selling custom work, and somebody's like, "Yeah, what's the least you'll take for it?" I don't know. If you really want to buy something I'm making for cheap, I'll chew a piece of Trident, and you can buy that for 30 cents. And you can put that in a little baggie, and you can take that out of here and get the fuck out of my booth. Like, seriously, man. Like, go haggle for a Terradrome. Haggling, not here. Just, I came up with these prices because I don't want to screw people, but at the same time, I want to offer people the best deal for what I make. But I'm not going to undersell my time.
Sure. No, but occasionally you just need to make some money up.
Sure.
Sometimes sure. At the end of the show, you're like, I really kind of need to make another $200 to justify this table, and then then you're doing it. You're still in control of your time. You're writing off your time, not somebody else writing off your time, and that makes a big difference.
No, 30 cents was a Canaan. 30-cent Trident. That does come in a baggie. I will put that in a baggie.
Used, but it's a baggie.
Yeah, it'll be one of the baggies that we did have. It's up to you. You take the 30-cent risk. So on the topic of, I will show this car again, just because it is kind of a fun something that I've only done a few times, but every time I do it, I always have a good time. That pine wood derby car, hand carved out of wood.
Not a piece of wood right there.
It is a nice piece of wood. I even made some for some cars for Bass Pro for a derby that they had against Richard Childress, the Goodrich team, and the one that I had my team build a couple that looked like actual NASCARs, and then I went with the classic NASCAR look.
Hell yeah. Freaking Daytona, man.
Daytona. But again, something like that would be way more expensive than just a painted pinewood derby car. This one's been this way for a while. You can tell some of the clear coat has yellowed a little bit, different types of wood that was used. But it's still, you never know when you're doing this stuff. You really don't ever know what kind of jobs you're going to get or what's going to come to you.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I think that for us, I think that's one of those things that makes it kind of interesting too, though. Like it's not always so. It's not always the same stuff. Like we get to do some different stuff. Hell yeah.
Thank you. So one of the things that I do, and this is going to be a little preview of something that Mikey and I are going to be presenting in a month or so, but I like to put together an inspiration board when I'm working on a project. Now, if it's a big project like shelves or helping someone build a deck or something crazy like that, I'm not going to make an inspiration board for that. I kind of got that. I know what that's going to be. But if I'm going to work on a concept, and it is a concept that I'm going to have to come up with from scratch, I really don't have something I'm going to copy, but maybe there's something that I would like to keep in mind. Maybe there's some design cues that I myself want to incorporate, or things that I like the look of. And so this one looks like this. The two on the left, those are actually original concept art for the Wreck-It Ralph Calhoun. That was some of the concept art for her costume. I find that it is, I think, superior to the one they did in the show. But one of the things I really like about this is the segmented kneecaps. Like, it's on both sketches.
Huh.
I was driving myself a little crazy thinking about how to make that to where that would actually scissor out when you bent the knee. That would just look so cool. That is a really cool design. Plus, this rifle thing is dope. This art, I've had this art in folders for years now. Not only do I love this style of art, this fast shape paint design style where you're just doing a concept rendering. So I also like when a design has an hourglass shape and you have the top and the bottom heavier than the middle. I like the way that looks. I know that most bulky spacesuits are real thick in the middle, but I kind of like the sci-fi aspect of this look, and I really like how this just looks like it's something that just sets over an existing design. I love this picture. I think I have the artist put away somewhere here. It's on DeviantArt. But again, you got the heavy top, narrow middle, heavy bottoms. I believe this guy is wearing like some sort of covers for his mechanical boots, because there's other art of this thing without these covers on it. So I really like the way this looks. I also, one thing I'm really interested in is how this looks like a space helmet. A sealed space helmet would fit into the same armor.
Maybe
This
it's like a Star-Lord helmet. Maybe it's like a digital thing, like a bubble that like generates.
This I do like this person's art. It very much reminds me of Doug Chang, one of the guys that did art for Lucasfilms for the Star Wars movies. It really reminds me of his style. But I really like the look of it. The changes in textures here. I really like when I'm sculpting armor or something. I really like to incorporate something that is a texture that doesn't just look like texture for the sake of texturing. Like, this actually looks like these segments. Maybe it works like Tony Stark's armor and it snaps around the back of your leg. So there's things here I like. I really like this simple. This is a jetpack, but he's on a manipulator hose, because he looks like he's repair or hull cutting. But either way, you still have maneuverability with the jets if you need them. Of course, these guys.
Hell yeah!
You can't not love these guys. And then
that cues up a question real quick. Maybe we'll get to it later, but Alpha wants to know: is Mr. K building anything for DFW?
Yes.
I assume he meant is, and he didn't call you ISIS. I'm willing to make that bet. I could be wrong.
It's okay. It's okay. Either way, I can answer the question. I did say that this inspiration board was an inspiration board for a project that is upcoming. This is some art I did for a concept years ago, but I still really love some of these armor cues. I love the boots with the jump jets on them. I like this setup here. There's a lot of this that I like. This helmet is not properly scaled, so but it looked cool in the image, and it gave me some great ideas. So I put that on the inspiration board to not forget my original concept, but to still want to do an homage. And so the answer is that the plan is to offer in Mikey's custom workshop something like this that for DFW would be an homage to this. And then in our regular store, we would have this. Colorways, not this exact figure. These guys clearly don't have armor because in the 70s they weren't thinking about anything but giant club feet and making sure it had a bubble helmet.
Having club feet is tight.
Club feet is tight. And actually, it doesn't go against some of these designs where you have the larger feet on the bottom, right? So it still has that hourglass shape, right? Even though it's a very simple design and very, I mean, I don't, I'm saying childlike, but it was made for children, and I loved the shit out of them when I was a kid. So it did its purpose. I still love them. They're simple. They're very well done, and that's kind of, yeah. So that is one thing that we are planning. And then if everything goes well, there will be a fairly cool accessory that will go with these sets. I say that everything that I've been working on is going towards that, and so that's kind of where we're going. We also have, I don't know, Mikey's got, I think, 6 different things to make that aren't the things we're talking about to go in our kits. Sci-fi should be done. It's been a rough week. My printer died last Sunday, and I am going insane here, not being able to do my final pieces for the sci-fi kit. And on to the next little projects. So that's kind of drives me a little crazy, but I think everybody kind of understands that.
As far as armor and helmet, though, it's pretty fucking dope.
Yeah, they're looking good.
That's pretty freaking rad. And the helmet, I hope the final's good. It's a nice thin helmet. But I mean, if you were using like one of our hooded heads, you'd have to do the same thing we do with the assault troopers and put the little foam pieces in. But if you're using like Tomax Zaymont, it fits right on there, like real nice. So I don't know. That's probably who I'm going to use for that one, because that V2 Sci-Fi, he kind of had some bigger hair. He did.
It's parted in the middle and kind of hangs over a little bit.
Got a little wave to it. It's pretty 90s. It's pretty 90s. So
it's a good one.
Looking forward to seeing what you got.
Um,
Off of this would be 1/12 is what we're working with here. But I mean, theoretically, it could be scaled down.
Yeah, yeah, I can do this here. Ooh. This is the framework.
Oh.
He's going to be leaned back more. I do see that goes there, but the thing is, if you remove this piece, you can see what it is. And also, clearly on the original design, they forgot to put little wings that fold out. So I had
sure.
I'm going to stick those in there too. But just in case you do not know, let's see. That's what it is.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, that is the big what if that is being worked on. But I have a ton of other little pieces to make. One of them is going to take some more engineering skill. And honestly, I'm going to have to get the printer running. If I can figure out how to make this work in 1/12 scale, I will. It's easy in 1/18 because you can just buy, electrical wire and do it. But if I can find a clever way to do this to where it still looks cool as hell and I have an idea for it, I just have to make sure that it's manufacturable. I think we'll probably have a couple dozen of them is all we're going to make. But and then there is DFW does a silent auction for usually like a wounded warrior or somebody like that. And this year they're going to do that, and we'll be donating a few pieces to that too to help out with that. So I really, really want to do that. I really want to get that project done. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. It sits right behind me here. So yeah, it's something that I am passionate about. I think that the adventure people did some really cool space stuff. And I think that there is that's something that no one else is looking at. They may be looking at it, but nobody's doing anything actively right now for that. So I'm gonna jump on this. But the idea is that you would be able to display it as the original piece, but then there will be a sliding fire bat like pod that snaps over the top that you can pull back and open for the pilot to set in. So it'll give it a totally different look, but you could display it like this, but it'll have runners in it to where that cockpit slides into it and can pull off. So the idea is this is a drop ship that you would put an armored trooper in. I call it a RICO pod. It's a rapid insertion of covered operative to where you put a soldier in it, fire it out of the jet, it lands, and they go on about their business. So to improve on this, I'll probably make a cargo space here that'll hold his backpack and weapons, just to make it to make use of all the space, so you feel like you're getting a good value when you buy it. I want it to be have good value for a handmade item, which I still consider 3D printing handmade, even though that's kind of technical. But I'm like the big guys. I can't justify getting them made and making 5,000 of them and having to sell them at Dollar Tree or whoever will take them. So I'm gonna try my hand at small run manufacturing and build some.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, so there, some of the ideas that I've got for the space stuff, even though it's not all. You saw some pictures on my inspiration board. Those are actually going to get split into two different styles of spacesuits that will work with classified figures. That's the other thing. My design parameter for the one for the show is that it will work on a Destro or barbecue body. So that's my design parameter. I want to have a figure that is pretty easily available. Barbecues are very available.
True.
Destros are already black, so the Destros will fit in with what we'll do for the show. So there's a lot to work out. There's a boot design. I've actually got an idea to make it so that the Destro shoe is pretty terrible. But
yeah, it is.
If you were somehow able to glue that shoe into a larger, more space-looking boot, and then have a snap-on cover that holds it in place, then you have all of the articulation of the boot, of the shoe, of the foot, without me having to make anything out of a soft material. Everything can still be 3D printed. So I'm kind of working on how to make that work. I think that's a slick idea, and the way that the armor is shaped, you really wouldn't see much of the angle of the ankle joint. So it would work. It would work. So that's kind of some of the stuff that is going on, other than things that we did talk about in the past. We've got a weapon system idea, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
A few other surprises that are going to come up, and finish off the Dragonski kit with a vest. Sci-Fi's backpack is almost finished.
Yep.
So the Sci-Fi V2 kit, we'll have the Dragonski kit. The thing that we're working on is like a smart gun harness, so that would be able to be used on several different characters if you want that kind of gun.
For
And
sure.
and then I've got some other projects that if you're at DFW, you'll be able to probably see the prototypes of those, if not a couple of samples. And of course, call sign longbow is still going. We're still planning on having some stuff delivered here pretty soon. So
Oh yeah,
that'll be glorious. I'll be glad to get
it
those
will be.
out. Glad to get those out. It's still, what I'm trying to do is avoid Chinese manufacturing if I can, just because I have lived that now for almost 10 years, and it honestly drives me crazy. It just does. There has got to be a way to do some of this here. I know that the painting of details and all that is expensive and can only be done affordably with Chinese slave labor. Hey, I need my eyes painted, dude. Sorry. Um, but I think that so I'm going to be really looking into that in the next 6 months. That is something I would like to have. Yes, because that is honestly that whole setup is the what do they call that, Mikey? The camera
Steadicam.
steady cam. That's just a steady cam setup that they mounted the gun to. I
Yeah.
mean, the idea of the smart gun is that your tracking module tracks the target and moves it for you, but just
Right.
the Steadicam gunner, which is also a repeater, is a Steadicam machine gunner. So those guys
Right.
just have just back and forth, just have a way. I'm not going to be able, obviously, to do it to where it has all of the articulation of a real one, but we just need to figure out a way to make it cool and sturdy enough that you can pose it and play with it, and that's
Right.
have at least two different weapons that fit on it, so you could make good guy, bad guy characters, stuff like that. And then at the
Yep.
same time, focus on some of the science fiction stuff that's coming in the future. And you talking about aliens. There was a book that came out that is like the Colonial Marines manual, and it showed how all that stuff worked. It was like a book that was it was designed to be like you were reading about the Colonial Marines and their current weapon systems and first encounters with xenomorphs and that kind of thing. And in there was a picture where they had the marine armor, but they also had this like bubble type helmet for atmospheric use that basically just used the exact same armor. It makes no sense science wise, but it really looked cool that they just made this helmet that just went on top of it that sealed your neck off for breathing. That book is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of ideas in there that you can kind of take from. But yeah, that steady cam gun setup, I think that is something that a lot of us would benefit from. And if we can get it made to where it can go with a couple of different vest designs, or just have a heavy wide belt that slides onto the torso and then has the mechanism in it, that's kind of what we're going for. So yeah, I'm not sure yet. I've done countless sketches of it and built one 3D model to try it, and it wasn't a good idea. So we'll try again.
Off. Yeah. I'm planning on bringing one. Um. Is the goal to have the ship ready by the summer?
Yes. Yeah. The goal is to have, like I said, maybe 2 dozen of them to sell. Probably be closer to 20. And I'm still working on the actual cost of what I'm gonna have to sell those for. I don't want them to be super expensive, so I got to be real careful with um, how much stuff I put in it that has to be assembled. The original just had some wheels on the bottom. I don't quite want to do just wheels, but there are opportunities there to maybe do a drop down skid, a couple of things like that. Yeah, man. The only thing left on that Dragonski kit is the vest and the tank on the front.
Mm-hmm.
So that we have the 50, we have the tanks, we have everything else ready for that. So that's yeah, we will have a lot of stuff.
This is actually something that Max and I were talking about last night on his post after post show.
Oh, really?
Um,
Cool.
we were talking about how he's obsessed with the guard tower that you did, and he wants one in 1/12 scale. And I was telling him that I we both hope that you eventually get to make that, and that you were looking at U.S. manufacturing, because U.S. manufacturing can still handle model kits that you assemble, as long as you take away the paint apps and the assembly, and that really takes the price back down. You still have to have tooling made in China, but you just bring the tooling over here, and you can do injection molding of model kits. And then, most of the people that are in this hobby, that especially the people that are into longbow stuff, are into that retro. So building the model kit, building the vehicle like you used to get to do, is still very appealing. So that was something I was sharing with him, with the model kit is still something that could be made here. So I think that's what he's referencing.
That is the ultimate goal here, is to get to the point where I find a couple of models that I believe will sell at that kind of a level. I have two contacts here in Missouri and one in Texas that can do some work like that. I'm trying to figure out how to make it happen. A lot of times you can use. Yep, there. Yeah, there's plenty of
It's
places
still here.
here
It's still
that
here.
would love to take on something like that. It not only helps them because it does grow their business when they know that they have product they can build to a client. Um, I've even thought about looking into some small injection molding machines and doing small runs. Yeah, and Mobius, yes, Mobius does great work. Yeah, so that there are things to do. Yeah, the modeling community, the awesome thing about that group, and that is a very collective term, because
Mm,
models range from one
that's a
600
big
scale
spectrum.
Valkyries and macros kits, all the way up to the 1/18th scale stuff from what is it, Hobby something. They have a Huey and a Harrier and a few other
Oh
jets.
yeah, I forgot
Yeah,
about the Huey. Yeah,
and then all the way on up to guys that are doing RC things. You got the guys that make boats, radio controlled boats. Those are basically models that go on the water. I worked with a guy a few years ago and helped him build a couple of masts for his uh,
yep.
for his and that was a 4 foot model, 4 or 5 foot destroyer, and it had, we built a mast tower, radar tower, and a mast setup for the lookout and all kinds of things for that. So,
Yeah.
and there's a, so there are things, and yeah, 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 and that is true, and I think that's kind of the way to do it. I think is to put things out as a kit, and when you
Mhm.
get it, and then you put the pieces together, which sounds so crazy now, because now when you buy something, you almost complain when you have to snap a tail fin in, and when I was a kid, you did GI Joe, and you had to put everything together, like hardly anything,
Right.
especially in the first 5 years. They literally were model kits. They were still on sprues and everything, and then as that
Yeah.
got on sprues was maybe the missiles and a few other pieces. You look at the Rattler, it had the wingtips were on sprues. It was basically a giant model kit. And that was also, just to remind everybody, that was at a time when some things at that time, Kenner was still making things here in factories. In the late 70s, they were still making things here in American factories, vehicles like the Millennium Falcon and the AT-AT from the Star Wars stuff for Kenner. Those were all made here. Figures were made in Hong Kong or China, but
Right.
the vehicles were made here for that reason. Because if you get somebody set up that's willing to do it and willing to make runs for you, they'll be on call all the time, and they have the American mindset where I could call them on a Friday night and say, like, listen, I got the money now. We need to ramp this project up. I need those
Right.
kits by this time. And the American mindset is, okay, I can make $8,000 by next Friday, or I could say, well, we still got to wait till August, because that's how we think. We're builders, we're makers, and we joked earlier about customer service, but as a country, especially in business, that is the king. Like, because the customer's where the money is at. And I'm
Yep.
not talking about a $50 steak here. I'm talking about being able to pay your employees, being able to keep the lights on at your factory. Like, you're going to take a job to do that, and you're going to be willing to do the best you can, because that person, if you're successful in what you do and they're successful in what they do, you're both going to make more money, and there'll be another project and another one after that. And that's what I want to do. I want to be able to tell people, like, hey, you got an idea? Let me help you workshop it. I'll get you up to the prototype stage, and we can find a factory to work on it, and I'll talk to the factory for you, and we'll get it made. And that's kind of where I want to go here by the end of the year. That is my transition to what I currently do now, to where I want to be. I want to offer those services. I want to be able to print things out for people. I want to be able to print our own designs. So I'm pretty dedicated to that. And so a lot of this that I'm trying to share right now are things that I am living right now. They're things that I'm working on right now. They're things that I am dealing with right now, trying to figure everything out.
Yeah.
So, and one of the lessons, like I learned this week, like, I have one printer and it's down, and the part that it needs almost as a 10 to 14-day delivery time for whatever reason. I don't know if going over the Rockies is that difficult for California. I don't know what happened. It got handed over to USPS, so who knows?
Oh shit.
What happened there? But they, so it's taught me that one of the first things that I need to invest in here coming up pretty quick is a second printer, so that I have a backup.
Oh yeah.
And if I get a good enough one, my current one will be my backup, and that will be the one that I use for prototypes and one that I use for productions. It did, Jeff, but I'm not going to pretend that the last 2 years with USPS for me has been a nightmare compared to the 2 years before that. It's gone downhill, and that has nothing to do with my mail guy. I have one of the best mail guys ever. In fact, this is the third one I've gone through since I've lived here, and each one of those people are top-notch people. If I put a little thing in the mailbox, say please come to the door to pick up packages. They do it. A lot of times I'll visit with them and just talk to them about stuff, and they have insight on the things going on, and that level of customer service, I'm definitely not complaining about that. I do love that. They are incredibly good. They're decent people. There's nothing against the people that work there, but somehow on the logistics side of things, something's gotten really messed up. And
Yeah.
I don't know why, and I don't know what that is. There for a while, you could get things. There was a deal, 5-6 years ago, where China had the e-packet post or whatever set up with the United States, where you could practically get that stuff delivered for free, and it had sometimes better delivery time than express coming from China. So I don't know.
Freaking crazy.
Yeah. And there is, that's a whole different conversation about the amount of management that these companies take in and absorb, while those regular folks that are delivering your mail are getting the angry comments and they're getting the angry customers. They're the ones having to deal with that every day, but they're doing their job every day. They're driving the route, they're dropping your mail off, they're doing what they're supposed to do. But somewhere, it's like the old joke about filling potholes on the side of the road, and the DOT is out there, and there's one guy filling the potholes and three guys standing around watching him. Same concept. And it seems I used to think it was just the government, but now I've worked in enough industry that it may not be the exact same. It may not be three guys watching him leaning on shovels. It'll be one guy watching him stand on shovels, and then two guys in the office up the road constantly up their ass about where they're at if they got filled yet.
Right.
So it isn't just a government thing, but it's definitely I think we
Yeah,
have to
I
see
see it. I
it.
see it at my work even. I mean, it's, you know, it's we would rather hire another member of management than we would another set of hands on the floor or in production or in shipping. We'd rather add another layer of management, add another lower upper middle tier to help supervise, because obviously supervision is the issue when it comes to production.
Yeah,
It's not.
yeah.
Spoiler alert, it's not. That's never the issue.
Well, here's the thing, Jeff. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you this. The group of people that even this group that is on here most of the time and on Mikey's show most of the time, uh, this group of people already has some of the best diorama builders that could be in the business ever, ever. I mean, some of the best. And I've been around for a long time. You know, I've gone to conventions for a long time. Gone where I can remember when people would do 8 to 10 foot, 12-inch GI Joe dioramas. That's how old I am. Just to see that now. Now, if there's something that we could create that somebody says, hey, I'm going to do some dioramas, but if I ever got to where I could make things on a much bigger platform where I could make 1 or 200 of something, I mean, I'd be happy to work with those guys on anything to do if there's some pieces we could make that fit in with what we're doing, stuff like that. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really right now nothing is off the table except I really want to avoid doing really really small jobs. But right now, you guys want something done, just holler at me or Mikey, and we'll put it in the pipeline. I'm, I'm working on a head for somebody. I got a couple of other projects for other people that I'm working on. And when you're the only person in your group, your home group that knows how to 3D print, knows how to make stuff, you end up making stuff for a lot of different people. It doesn't pay very good, but it makes you feel good to help them out.
And you hone in your skills no matter what,
Right.
which is always
Right.
a positive that you kind of have to force yourself to see sometimes,
Yeah.
because you get kind of bummed out about you're not making much money, you're not, your time. But when you think about it, when you put it into perspective that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert on something, you're just logging time, like you're just
Just log in
honing
time.
your craft.
Yeah. I had a project last week where somebody wanted a Lego piece made. I knew it wasn't going to pay very good. Um, but at the same time, I thought, okay, sure, let me do that. Let me put that in my library of things I've done. Now I know what needed to happen. I know more of the stuff about it. It wasn't for production or anything. It was just for a project they were working on with their kid, and it was fun. And then they were able to use it for what they were doing, and that's all that I cared about at that point. But when you're doing other things, it's easy to put something like that in the queue and say like, "Oh, I'll just throw that in. I'll do that this afternoon and knock it out."
Sure. Sure. There you go.
I don't know. I don't know. I could see some things. I was showing off that complex build stuff that they did. That company, they're still building product, and hopefully by the end of the year, that all that stuff that I worked on will be released, and they'll have some new molds of the original pieces, and there'll be some other stuff there, some other colors. Those are going to come in, and I think it would be more prudent to focus on, like, if I did that little spaceship, like maybe later down the road, we would make a piece that 4 of them sat on, like if they were in a hangar, maybe something like that. Then you could just put it together, almost thinking of a Gundam, Robotech Macros kind of thoughts, where you bought those little sets that had the elevator, built into it. It didn't really have an elevator; it just looked like an elevator.
Sure.
This is a repackage. But yeah, something like that.
That's
You
pretty
know,
cool. Yeah, so I
like
mean that's like the Joey Toy stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, the little like mech bays and stuff like that. That'd be pretty cool.
yeah. If I made you a if I made you if we made you an exosuit, then maybe make you an exosuit place where it sits, kind of like Fallout had the places to hang your armor, like something like
Yeah, the
that.
hanger. Yeah.
I could see that happening. Maybe lockers for a locker room, or just specific stuff. But yeah, I mean, dude, I'm not going to put anything out because if somebody has some ideas. There's there's an idea right now working with a guy on a GI Joe vehicle that I think somebody has done or not a vehicle but a play set that I think somebody has 3D printed, but making it modular to where you wouldn't just have to go with the square design that it was originally made with. You could lengthen one side of it out, maybe go another way with it. Uh, he and I have been talking about that. I don't know if that'll get off the ground, but that would also be something that would be pretty cool. It's possible Hasbro might make that, but in the meantime, we'll just talk about it.
I mean, so far they've just done one thing that you could consider like a Dio piece, really at all,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the bunker
Yeah,
that Alley Viper that Trench Viper comes with. So I don't know if that means they're gonna maybe start doing some, tough to call it a play set, but pieces to potentially build a play set. I don't know if they're gonna keep doing that. It probably depends on how well that does, but I hope they I hope they do. 'Cause if for nothing else other than backdrops.
right. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that these sets that Revell did under the Robotech name, uh, they had also done them in Japan under the Macros name, which is the same thing. But you see that they have the exact same 4 kits that Revell made, just with this really cool artwork on it.
That
Just a few years
looks like
older.
dragon art. That's cool.
Yeah, but if you, a lot of people don't realize this, that
Yeah.
there are literal art books out there of Macros art, and it's a
Oh,
lot of
that's
it is like that. It's just these gorgeous sketches of Valkyries and of their equipment and gear.
oh,
It's really cool.
that is cool.
Yeah, and there's also there's also other things that people don't think about, but the robotics. I don't know how many of you remember robotics. They had the play sets that you could turn into anything. There's just a bunch of different pieces. You can make what you want, but they came with some pretty cool astronaut type space guys. So there's stuff that you could pull some inspiration from and make some different things. Lots of different things. It doesn't have to just be a kit to make a GI Joe character that hasn't been made yet. The danger of doing that is when they make that figure, you're probably never going to sell a kit again of that.
Unless theirs just kind of sucks.
Yeah, Alpine kit.
Yeah, that's a good example. That's a good
Yeah,
example. Yeah, like sometimes the kits just they miss. They reuse instead of a specific part where you're like, they really should have modeled a new piece.
yeah.
Uh,
I have trouble. I have
that
trouble
happens.
thinking about the. I have trouble thinking about why Alpine's grapple gun would be the exact same thing that Cobra uses.
Sure, sure.
In that case. Yeah. So this is robot. Now I'm gonna tell you something cool about this. You can literally still buy this from the guy that makes them. It is a kit, and it
Huh.
does come with the little 5 POA astronaut.
Laser scanner.
they made these in the 70s. They made these that were, I mean, literally came in boxes like this of like space
Oh,
station sets,
Jesus.
that kind of thing. Like the astronaut designs, super super cool. Um, flip up helmet,
Whoa.
cool. I love the way this helmet looks. Just love it. Yeah, this one's got a flip up too.
Oh, I
There were
like that.
four different designs that they painted different ways. I think they only ended up with 7 or 8 different ones altogether by the time they were done. They really didn't focus on the figures, though the figure detail is really amazing. It's really good. So I would love to do some of that. I just the mathematics and the tolerances required to do that. When, like I said, you can still learning curve toys. I believe is who still makes. Now I think he
That's
only
cool.
makes small kits like this, but he's been the owner of the license for years, and
Yeah.
he still sells them. I bought
That's
this.
that's
I
freaking
bought
cool.
this about 4 years ago. I mean, I have lots of vintage stuff, but this is what the new ones look like.
That's cool as hell.
So there's people always talk about like Starcom, and they talk about the toys that we know about and we talk about all the time, GI Joe, Master of the Universe, stuff like that. People talk about that stuff all the time, but there were these small little niche things too that a lot of people didn't see. Robotics you could usually buy at Radio Shack because it was back then we didn't call it that, but it was basically what STEM is now. Is Radio Shack had this opportunity, this whole mindset that they were going to come out with lines of toys that encouraged kids to get into electronics or get into engineering and get into building things. Robotics fit that, because when I was a kid, you could go into Radio Shack and you could buy a beginner's kit on making your own radio and things like that. So Radio Shack's always supported that, even though now we have a fancy name for it and a government budget that helps support it, and we have a lot of focus on it because of the lack of people following those fields because of the amount of discipline and time it takes to become an expert in those fields. It's hard to think when you're 18 years old that you want to get into something that, yeah, it might take you somewhere crazy, or it might just make you change your mind and decide to be a drugstore worker and live out your dreams.
No different than focusing your spare time into a garage band, you know. It's a little more practical than that, you know. Kids do that all the time, you know. Folks, they think they're going to be rock stars, and that's what they go into, and then they end up, going into a plumbing apprenticeship when they're 19, like,
Absolutely.
you know.
Absolutely.
Now we just kind of get the benefit of seeing that even stuff that's niche can be very lucrative. Like now we have that exposure, like
Yeah.
Max was talking with the Dio, like, yeah, people have done that for fucking decades. I mean, I remember, going to those train shops with you and Papa and seeing like little dios they had with trains, and that blew my mind. And thinking like, how
Probably.
cool would that be for seeing GI Joes on that?
And I would say, one of our first episodes was about kit bashing.
Mm-hmm.
Probably kit bashing came from the model railroad industry, at least
Right.
that name for it.
Name,
But
yeah.
but I would say that adult men building giant dioramas of toys started with hobby trains.
I have no doubt.
Probably in the 50s or earlier. Whenever, I mean, they've been building those trains for a long time, and a lot of those weren't just for kids.
Yep.
In all the scales. I mean, model railroading has 7 scales that you can build in. So, even predates slot car racing in the 70s and late 60s.
Sure.
And just like now, a lot of people just did that in the shame of their own basement. Number one, there's room there. And number two, the wife doesn't have to admit to when your friends come over for dinner that you spend most of your evenings down there playing with toys.
Right.
It's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it took a while. I think it's still kind of in the keep it kind of out of public eye as a hobby. It's not quite, working on a car, working on a boat, woodworking. Like there's the certain things that are just they're just full on accepted by society. Like, oh, that's what you do in your spare time. That's very interesting, as opposed to making dioramas, painting action figures.
Yeah,
There's still like a taboo to it.
but even those people, and I know Jeff can. If Jeff's still on here, he knows how this is. If you tell somebody that you are an amateur bass fisherman and you spend $18,000 to $25,000 a year on a new boat just to hope you get a sponsorship, and you tell somebody that's what you do, they kind of say, do you make any money doing that? Drag racing, same thing. You spend thousands of dollars to
Yeah,
get to 11 seconds, thousands of dollars, or sometimes nine, depending on your bracket. You spend a ton of money to do that, and you can't usually drive that car around every day. There is nothing practical. Just like a boat, I can't drive a bass boat to work. All right, I can't drive my dragster to work unless it's got a Hemi. But in real terms, if you've built a car just to be a racing car, it is just a racing car. A boat has no practical use except your sanity to get out there on the water, drop a jig, sit out there in peace all day. Maybe you catch fish, maybe you don't. And if you do, you try to find the honey holes out there and you go do tournaments a couple of times a year. That's just adding some fun, kind of like when you enter a custom contest for toy figures. And now a lot of that's more accepted because it's more mainstream, but there's still a bit of almost like every time you have a hobby that costs money, some people will make you feel like you somehow have to justify why you do the hobby that doesn't make you any money, even
right.
though they're saying right there hobby. Like
It's
it's
hobby.
what I do to get out of here for 2 days, and I'm
Yep.
very happy to go do that. I'm very happy to go sit in a duck blind all day, maybe not hit a single bird, or maybe I come home with the mother load. It's whatever makes you happy, whatever
You
your
bet.
hobby is. And I usually, and maybe that's why I have issues with people that shame people for hobbies, fishing, hunting, any of those. Like I don't have any problem at all with people that do those things because I understand. I
Yeah.
understand. I sink a lot of money into my hobby, historically a lot of money, and until the last couple of years when I saw where I really wanted to start going with it, it really didn't. I really didn't think about it making money, but now I think there's a place for that. I think that a lot of people would like to have that avenue where we could get some of this stuff done.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff, it takes work. Like I've known several.
Yeah. No. No. The honestly, like the best you can practically hope for is that you can make enough money to support your hobby. Like figure painting. Like I don't see this as a job per se. It's making money to support my side of the hobby while
Yeah,
also getting enjoyment out of the process itself. And I think that's kind of a sweet spot. And even if you were somebody that's doing like the YouTube stuff, which is becoming that's a pretty big hobby just in streaming.
sure.
Even that, it's not taking on so much that it starts to feel like the job either. You know,
Yeah,
like I feel like I'm not that close to my thought. He was a really good dude. I'm glad I met him. I hope I get to see him again. But it seemed like he was streaming like every day. And I think that added to the personal toll of just having to feel like every day you have to perform, you have to do this live, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I can see how that kind of pressure would start to weigh on you because now you're seeing it as a job. You have to clock in, you have to do this, you have to if you're looking at analytics, you got to hit numbers. It can be very stressful, and I think it's important to keep it into scope. What you're doing it for.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's how I grew up in a small town in Missouri, and my dad did like trains. So going to a train convention was euphoric for me because there was almost always at those conventions in Kansas City and stuff, there would always be like somebody there selling model kits. Back when I was a kid, there was only one store in Kansas City that really sold a very nice line of military or space based model kits, and they also sold gaming stuff. And I was so sad when they went out of business because they had such a great selection. And it wasn't like now where I can go online now and find about any model kit that I ever wanted if I'm willing to pay for it.
Yeah,
And some stuff isn't that bad. Like I said, I cannot remember the name of that hobby, that company that makes those 1/18th scale helicopters and the Harrier, and they've got a couple of other kits that are pretty nice. And those kits are only like $88. I mean, they're not going to be for hard play. You're not going to be able to smack them around like when you were 7 or 8. But
sure.
you want a
Display though.
1/18 Huey, that's where to get one for under 100
Hmm.
bucks.
Yes, indeed.
And so yeah, but yeah, I remember going to those conventions and I'd pick up stuff, just from the railroad hobby stuff that worked. That's where I bought my first stuff to make molds ever was at a train convention. I bought a thing to make some molds outside of my dad did part time. He helped out a ceramic shop, and I'd spend time over there. And at that time, I was fascinated by how molds worked, even though they were plaster molds, and you were just putting ceramic in them, plaster or concrete, depending on what you were making. So that's when I really got into how molding worked and all that. So yeah, so I got some mold material at a train store, made my own little rocks and stuff. But and it was also something that even though Dad didn't quite understand the things that I liked and why I liked them because he didn't see the practicality in it, going to a train convention anyway, he didn't see the practicality in it, but it did. Those two hobbies overlap. I have a very good friend who is a professional bass fisherman. He was also a he worked at the company I worked for, and he was one of the project managers for the bass boat. He was the project manager for the bass boat brand. And over time, there he and I had several things we worked on together. He did advertising, some logo work, doing a truck, a support truck, coming up with decals for that, stuff like that. So even though we both worked in boats, it wasn't my hobby, but my hobby intersected with a friend's hobby because I did that stuff on the side. And,
Sure.
so, and then you kind of come to know that other hobby a little bit and understand where that hobby comes from. And then it is easier for you to feel like you're not just an idiot collecting toys because these guys are spending their money on this. And this guy that builds cars and now he builds car accessories and helps people build drag cars. Okay, that guy found a way to make money with his hobby, but I
Yeah.
understand that hobby too. It's not that I don't want to do it, not all the time. I don't want to do it, but it's like I get that hobby, So and I understand that. And when it all comes down to it, most of us deal with the same issues, whatever our hobby is. It's how secluded we are compared to everybody else. You know. Hmm.
What's up, Alex?
Hmm. Uh, I'm trying to remember how old he was when he did his first O-rings, but it wasn't. He wasn't very old. I think one of his first ones was turning a Zartan into a Wolverine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then he tried the spray painting stuff and did some of that. Lots of failures, but that's what we do when we first start out. The first figures I really ever customized were Star Wars figures, and I had no idea at that time. The only paint you could really buy anywhere was at Walmart, and it was all the oil based stuff. and I painted that stuff up with oil-based stuff, and it worked fine on the torso pieces, but the arms and legs I still have them. They're just sticky and they look terrible. But
Yeah,
but you
soft
start
plastic does not do well with that.
no, it doesn't. So you get kind of to where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can make this better somehow, or I can make it look more like I want it to. Yep, I agree with this completely. My dad and I had a Saturday where we ran a few errands or did a few things, stopped at the government bookstore, and we would always hit a couple of train stores on the way home from Kansas City. So yeah, I get it. I get that completely. But yeah, Mikey was making cool figures. I'm going to say before he was a teenager. Yeah, say
Yeah,
eight or 10.
yeah, because I'd moved away from O-ring Joes by that time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would have been. I don't know. I think I'd have been single digits though,
Yeah, and you gotta
because it
you
was
gotta
before
remember.
we started doing models. Because that was how I really started learning how to paint. Was that first Malibu we did in the
Mhm.
Camaro, the RSSS.
Yeah, you think about at that time though, the focus of our hobby was 12-inch,
Right.
1/6 scale. So there's not a lot of extra customizing you do there, Khalid. You
Yeah.
got, your customizing came from how you split the kits and packages up and made your own stuff. It was more kit bashing than customizing, but we did a lot of it. We did a ton of it.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
And I think that's probably what gave Mikey the mind of, okay, I need to look in this kit to get this. I need this from this kit, and I could use this from this kit and come up with a look pretty close to this movie.
Yeah, that was definitely what laid the foundation for part sourcing and scavenging parts from different things is definitely the 12-inch, the 6 days, and then going to those shows, outside of St. Louis where people just had totes and bins of different bits and pieces, like I remember when we found that cell phone, and then we found those 1/6 scale stoner machine guns, you
Oh
know,
yeah,
just those little bits and pieces that we didn't have a source for outside of those, and then just seeing stuff and immediately having like a plan for it. That definitely is how I you know got started down that in that mindset for sure.
yeah. I can remember going to shows and we'd get in the car and we'd talk and we'd be like, okay, what are we gonna get? What are we looking for at this show? I can remember the first when Marauder first started, and he had like 10 guns, and they were all guns we needed in 1/18 scale. Yeah, just buying. Okay, here's an AK-47. Here's this
Mm,
with a grenade launcher. Here's an RPG. Oh, this year he's got an aliens rifle.
right. And then with 1/6 scale, there was you were making stuff from scratch. I mean, you were
Mm-hmm.
and we were doing that pretty early. Like, we talked about that Action Man, that rifle, you cut it down and made it look like a sawed off pump shotgun.
Yeah,
There was the grenade launcher for the AK-47, the folding stock for the AK-47. You
yeah,
know, it was just little bits like seeing like, okay, well, they don't make this, and that's what I want. So scratch build time.
yeah, yeah. So to think about coming from that, and it's hard for me sometimes because I'll see something and be like, I'm just going to buy that just for this little piece, and then I have to remember like, or you could just 3D print it the way you want it. And so I'm still struggling with that, trying to get that mindset. Be like, yeah, I could buy 3 more of these figures at $15 a piece to get this one armband, or I'll just make a new armband.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so that is that. So that's
Well, I did
that's kind of. Go ahead, bud.
I did come up with one example that that I can share of design versus, you know, what happened on paper versus what was the ultimate result, right? Um, and it was whoops, there we go.
Mhm.
It was the coils helmet. I knew this is what I wanted, and we had we had somebody that could do it, but I had to show him how to do it. So this is the first drawing I did of of the helmet. So this is okay. Um, why? Hold on. Um, what the hell is going on like I went to bring up a window and it like closed out my tab. I have no idea what the hell just happened. Okay, window, share. So this is the design of the helmet. It's a side, a front, and a back. So when I designed this, I still part of my mind still sees it like AutoCAD. So I still try to use the principles, which keeps all the lines together. But so this was the design. Um, this was kind of how I was looked in my mind. It was a little more Serpentor helmet, but motorcycle. Um, then just kind of like narrowing down like the characteristics of it. This was showing how the curves would work on the helmet. So yeah, the top of the helmet would be kind of concaved, and then some things would be unclaved, like they'd roll over. So I'm trying to show somebody that's 3D sculpting from a two-dimensional standpoint, and it was not easy. So just breaking stuff down, getting into details, um, and then getting into some of the design. Uh, this is these are a little later, I think. Let's see here. And these. mm, Oh, this is not working at all. This being down one monitor thing is really really kicking my ass on work. This is brutal. So this was the first one that came out, and you see it's really blocky. The proportions are not at all what I was trying to get, and so it took months of back and forth trying to get this dialed in, and we eventually get like here. Here was an early one where now it's got a hard edge, and there's these ribs in the middle, and then this is me trying to dial in the shape. I'm like, no, 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 I want that to kind of curve. It's a motorcycle helmet, and this is a person that apparently had never looked at a motorcycle helmet, so that was a really difficult detail to describe. I'm like, no, no, it still needs to function as a motorcycle helmet. And he's coming up with different things like there's not much of a curve on the top of this helmet here, but there's these really hard rectangles for these air ducts. It just didn't work. And this one was like super elongated. I'm like, no, a human head still needs to fit in there. So it's just constantly like working with them, trying to get little details right, and then having them hone in the details. This is right here. This is showing that this line goes down and meets, but it's not a straight line. I want that line to go from the high point in the back and form a ridge to the front of the helmet. And it's just trying to describe something in your mind is very tricky, especially when what you're using as a reference isn't something that person's accustomed to. Now, it came out, it looked pretty good. That was this. Oh, there you can see the helmet that I was trying to get. It finally came out. It looks glorious. You did a great job. But on this job, this took months of me in constant contact and constantly him sending me a picture and me saying like, nope, that it needs to be this way. Frustration on both sides. So it was something that took a lot of work and a lot of communication, and it was very difficult from where my mind was with design influence to where his was with interpretation, completely at opposite ends. And now I work with Dad, so now he has to deal with my ideas.
Well, I think
he's better with references.
We do more of the inspiration board type development. Like, I want it to be this, but I saw this picture and I would like to incorporate this. And also, here's what it has to fit, and this is what we got to do. And so when you have that, and Troy and I deal with this we have a new sculptor, and she is amazing. But part of what makes her amazing is that if we don't send her a particular reference that she needs, she will go research it and send us a picture and say, this is what I was thinking for, this is going to sound really petty, but the shoelaces, the bootlaces. Is this okay? Or do you want them covered? Or how do you want the bootlaces to look? And then it's like, oh, we forgot about that. Yeah, this is what we want it to look like. That what you got is perfect. Yeah, make it look like that. And and she's not going to sit on something for a month before she says, is this what you want? Like, if she's not sure what we want, she'll ask. She'll say, like, this is what I'm thinking, but before I spend a bunch of time adding all the lines and doing all the detail work, like, you gotta, when you're building something in 3D and even somewhat in CAD, you have to start with the basic shape first. You can't go crazy and put Chad, if I put my glasses on, all you'll see is my lights.
Get him.
You can't go crazy putting a bunch of ribs and details and scales and stuff on the textures until you get that original shape pretty much dialed in. Because, like I talked about parametric modeling, when you go to stretch it or shape it a different way, you're going to lose anything that had to work somewhere else. So you really have to get that stuff narrowed down.
You do. And I mean, we've touched on it briefly, but the references, right? Like, you were very focused on that in my upbringing, whether it be, drawing a car or drawing a, comic book character or whatever it was, is you drilled it into my mind because, and now we share the same things irritate both of us when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like, the Lee-Field stuff, right? The ridiculous proportions that does not make sense for a human to be shaped like that. But, Lee-Field was, he'd focus on the lines in the face, doing all those crazy lines, and that I don't think that looks good. But some people do like that. But then when you see Captain America at a 90-degree angle and you can see just as much of his left side, which is away from the camera, as you can the right side, which is towards the camera, and you reference that by where his elbows are on both sides, that fucks with your mind. Or the John Romita Iron Man cover, where they obviously flipped the lower half and now it doesn't line up. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah, because the original. If you flip the legs back, there's a total
It's
center of
it's
gravity
right.
for that
Yeah.
figure. But by
So
flipping the legs
those
over,
things we see with our eye, and it doesn't make sense. So it blocks us. It creates a barrier, and you see it sometimes with 3D modelers. You'll see something for sale, on eBay or something, a model that somebody's done, and they've focused on something very specific, right? Like something super specific, a texture or a detail, and then but the rest of it, the shape isn't right. So it throws you off. Like, yeah, that detail is really good. Like it could be a texture inside of an air inlet or something. Like, man, that's a grid pattern, it's honeycomb, whatever, and it looks really good. But then the shape of the helmet, you're like, could somebody actually wear it? Like that seems odd.
yeah,
But that's that. It's the reference. Like, um, when you sculpt something, you've shown it, or you have like the 3D scan of like Dusty or something, and you're modeling over what actually is. Like people
yeah,
that design helmets and stuff, you would have a head that you would be modeling it around. So you're like, oh yeah, I have to bring it out so because people have noses. Whereas if you're designing an action figure, maybe that doesn't matter so much, because people will focus on how big the helmet is, like the Viper. Like, oh, Vipers have huge helmets. Like, yeah, but if you ever try to whittle one out so it fits on a head, it's really not much bigger than the head.
yeah.
Stormtroopers, same deal. So I think that's one of those things that we kind of some people overlook and then some people hyper focus on it.
Yeah, and again, that's part of design intent. That we started the show with. That the whole idea there is that the intent is to, number one, it has to fit this, it has to look like this, and please don't make it look like this. And then the rest of it can all be built in. But if you send somebody solid references, if you send me a 2D, a side front view, side front back, a 3 view or a 5 view drawing of it, like a turnaround sketch, that you hand off to a 3D sculptor. When you do that stuff, you're giving the artist everything they need. And if they don't have, usually if you get a question, it's because we haven't, client and maker must not have delivered on one of those variables in the 5 steps. Something there we're not agreeing on. If you send me that coil helmet and you said we have to have this done, I have to be able to have them made by June for the shows. Okay, that's my timeline. So I probably won't wait till May 30th to start sending you sketches of a 3D model that is not going to meet what you need. I'm going to want to get on that pretty quick,
Sure.
because if there is going to be a 2 month back and forth, I'd like to get that out of the way before the deadline.
Right.
So that's, it's true. So speaking of that, where I think we're at what, 2 hours now.
Hmm.
Um, so this is kind of the format that we're going to start doing. The idea is, Mikey has a show where he talks about the painting and stuff like that. He and Zakanan have that show on
Wednesday.
Wednesday night. It's actually in the evening. It's an early show, so you can catch it and go on about your evening. You might have to
30
sacrifice.
Central.
You might have to sacrifice the evening news, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. Mikey lays down some pretty good tips. The chat's always good. That is Mikey talking about that part of it, because a couple of kooks is kind of turning into more of a business type situation where we're making kits for the fans and trying to make things that fans would want, and we want to focus on that. We want to do that. So we're going to talk about more about that side of what we do. We're always going to show like stuff we're working on, and then we'll spend a pretty good part of chat just talking about how we got there, or like today, just talking about things that chat brought up that they want to talk about. We're really open on chat, but both of us feel like the chat is a pretty important part. We like to do what we want to present to you guys in the first hour, and then the rest of it, however long that lasts, is just you guys communicating with us and back and forth and trying to share knowledge and ideas. And that's that's kind of what we want to do with it. It's not if we didn't want to do something where Mikey's talking about the same thing here, he's talking about on Wednesday night and on Thursday night on Figure It Out at 9 p.m. Central. It's not those two shows, because there are things that happen in those two shows. So that's kind of so this show is more, we're talking about the technical side of things. We're talking about how to get where we're going to get, and then just BS for a while. And I feel like it seems like a pretty good format. Let us know if you'd like to see us, if there's something you would like to see us talk about, or something you want to see us go over. It's not usually a struggle, because usually something happens between that 2-week period when we do a show that both of us are like, let's just do a show about this. Let's just talk about this. This is where we're at on this. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about design intent. Let's talk about how to make sure that when somebody says, hey, I really wish you'd do that, and then we do it, and then you say like, well, not like that. Well, let me know what you think we ought to do. I'd like to hear it. And I do want to get to a point where not everything, like we have a nice mix of kits to make classic characters and kits that are our own proprietary designs that are our own thing. I mentioned on one of the shows that, if you built our other kits and you bought figures for it, you're going to have a bunch of dusty bodies left over. Well, one of the things we're working on is a way to use dusty bodies to make something super cool.
Sure.
And since dusty bodies have pinless joints, that adds a little bit of not just it's really not a problem. It's just a challenge, and that means that everything's going to have to fit over the figure as it is after you paint it up.
Improvise, adapt, and overcome.
That's right.
The customizer's stolen motto.
and to borrow something from my previous life, the convention is tomorrow. Just the convention is tomorrow. Just, if you're working on something for the convention, don't think about it being 2 months away. It's tomorrow.
Yeah, it's like a rule one of pew pews. It's always loaded.
It's always loaded.
Always loaded. Keep that mindset. You be okay.
Yeah. Yes, you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that does it. I think we covered what we wanted to talk about, Pop?
I think so. I want to thank everybody that came out that is watching today. All 5 of you. We appreciate you being here.
It's currently 24, but yeah, appreciate all of you.
24, and that's awesome. We actually get a lot. We get a lot of the replay squad hits on this show. People going back and watching what we talked about.
We do. So, that's kind of the downside, if you could see it as a downside to doing morning shows. But we kind of like the Sunday morning for us. It sets the right pace, and the people that do watch it that's great. We love you guys doing this live and talking to us with the chat, but we're okay with this being a replay squad thing. Like, you guys want to watch it later this week, we just appreciate you watching and enjoying our content.
Absolutely. We feel like we have a lot to share, so Mikey's got three shows worth of stuff to share.
It's true. I didn't think that would happen, but it did. It sure did. Yeah. So yeah, we really do appreciate you guys coming through for us and engaging with us, and we hope you like what we come up with. We hope you we make something that makes you want to support us, and get the parts and get the brand going. Pretty excited about it, and we've got some projects that I think are going to be pretty sick. So
yeah, they are.
So this week you catch me Wednesday night 6:30 Central with Zakanin. I'll be doing JMK Custom Works live, doing some detail work on the Assault Trooper kit and figure. Like I said, start on some detail work. We got the base white. I should be ready to move on Wednesday. Thursday, Zakanin and I are going to do Figure It Out, joined by Yojo Jerk. So Jerk's going to be pulling a double shift on this Thursday. So don't expect a long show Thursday night for Thursday Night Thunder. Outside of that, again, guys, appreciate you watching. Hope see you in the next one. Have a good one.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Eat my short.
Go fuck yourself. You shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
Flush that turd down the drain. Avenge me! Avenge me!
Thank you. Thank you.